fellow readers. I can't tell you how excited I am that Janice is joining us tonight. And I say Cantore, and I forgot to ask her if I was pronouncing it right, so I'll have to do that later. But Janice is going to be joining us tonight to talk about her latest book that released, Breach of Honor. And if you guys have not read it yet, you've got to go get a copy, because it's probably one of my favorites of hers now. I've been reading her for years, and we both started, she was quite young when she started writing, and I was very young when I started reading. So it worked out good for us. So Janice is joining us from quite a ways away. We'll let her share that if she would like to, but she will be joining us shortly. And until then, if you have questions for her, make sure you either put it in the Zoom chat or the Facebook chat if you're joining us there. And like I said, I'm hoping she's joining us soon. So she should be actually joining us. There she is. I knew she was coming.
Hello.
Hello. Did I say your last name correctly?
Cantore.
Cantore. See, I have been pronouncing it wrong. I should have asked beforehand. Sorry about that. So
that's okay. A lot of people say it wrong. I'm used to it.
Us Dutch people, we can never pronounce anything unless it says Vander in front of it. So tell us a little bit about Breach of Honor. What is the idea behind that story?
Well, the story comes out of my concern about victims of domestic violence. How it's not, a lot of times it can be the person that you really don't think. Like, who would think that a police officer would be a victim of domestic violence? And and a lot of times women who are abused suffer in silence out of shame, or maybe a fear. They don't know what would happen if they left the guy, even though they're being treated horribly, which I saw a lot when I was working. And so whenever I start to write a book, it's always what if. So it started with what if she was a cop, what if, and it just rolled downhill from there. So that was where it came from.
Interesting. And somebody has already asked, was it based on a true story or maybe parts of true stories?
No, I mean, I'm sure there are women out there who were convicted of murder when they were actually just defending themselves. I'm sure that happened. Unfortunately, I'm sure that happens to men too. But no, I mean, there was no true story in my head when I mean, there were some similar stories. There was a story about a custody officer, a jailer, who killed her husband, and that was what she claimed was self-defense. I don't know how that case came out, but that was a case that happened. So, I mean, there are similar stories, but it was not based on one particular one.
Yeah, that was a good question. Thanks for typing that in so quickly. So there are, besides the abuse, other really heavy topics in this book. I mean, it's been out for a little while, so I'm hoping to not give too many spoilers for people out there. But I mean, you deal with corruption, you deal with the prison system. How do you, as a writer, not let that kind of drag you down?
Well, it can, especially the idea of corruption in the police. I mean, I don't want to get started on how bad a year cops have had. But no one hates a wrong cop more than a good cop, because people tend to paint with a broad brush. Anyway, but I do recognize when I worked, there were a couple times when guys I knew were fired because of what they were doing. And one in particular was abusing his position to make money. And so that just kind of got woven, that kind of aspect got woven into the story. But and now I'm totally zoning on what exactly your question was. I'm sorry. I started to think about the wrong thing. So what was your question?
That is fine, and continue to do that. I'll go off on a rabbit trail too. So we'll do it merrily together. Because of the tough topics in the book, I was asking, how do you keep from being kind of sucked in by the darkness? I mean, the book is dark.
There's always a spiritual. Whenever I start a book, I always start with a spiritual question. And for Leah, It was, where was God? Where was God when her mother died? And then she has to deal with it. Where was God when she had to shoot her husband? So, and that is always right here, the whole spiritual question. And I believe Romans 8. God works all things. He doesn't say, well, some things, there's no parentheses there, but some things are too hard for him to work out. No, there's no parentheses there. God works all things out for the good. And I remember once, if you don't mind me sharing a story that's not totally on topic, but when I was working, I responded to a traffic accident. And this was back when if you had a baby, you put it in the front seat with the car seat facing backward.
Yep.
And so this woman was driving and she fell asleep at the wheel and impacted a tree. And when we got there, she was in the driver's seat, the baby was in the front passenger seat, and the husband was in the back seat. He had been asleep across the back seat. Anyway, when we got there, it was a two-door car, and we could not get the car doors open because of the way it impacted the tree. So there was nothing we could do until fire got there with jaws of life. Anyway, to make a long story short, they concentrated on the baby first. They got the baby out. And as soon as they got the baby out, it was obvious there was an issue with the baby. And so they rushed off to the hospital. And by the time they got the mom out, the baby had died at the hospital. So it was a very, very, very sad. And the woman, the driver, her leg was totally mangled because of the way the car door crushed her left leg. Anyway, on the floorboard of the back of the car were two Bibles. I could recognize they were Bible covers. And I just remember thinking about that after the fact and praying for that family. Anyway, about a year later, I was reading the newspaper and there was a article. They used to have a religion section. I don't know if they have a religion section in newspapers anymore. But there was a whole story about this woman and her husband and how that had been the worst night of her life, how her firstborn son had died. It was her fault because she fell asleep. And her leg was so mangled, I think she was still in therapy and physical therapy for it. But she said that she and her husband stayed together because they believed in God and they believed in his promises, and it strengthened their marriage, and it strengthened, even though it was the most difficult thing in her entire life, she still clung to her faith in the Lord. And that just really impacted me because you rarely ever, unless you were going to court, you never had follow-ups on what you dealt with. Sure. And for me to see that story, it just impacted me. So, I mean, I totally believe that promise. The Lord works all things out for good. But we have to stay strong in our faith too. So.
You know what? And that makes perfect sense. It really does. It fits very well with that because, and I do like that you brought it up in the book. Where was God in this? That is that was a good question. I like how that kind of just echoed through the whole book. And again, spoilers a little bit, but and now I'm blanking. You said you were going to do this. I'm blanking on the character's name completely. But when she was sent to prison. And you didn't paint it in a positive light. I don't want anybody to think you painted it as sunshine and roses. But you made it realistic in that she had to work hard to make it okay. And I like that. I like that human element you brought into it. So I have a question from a reader. It's going to take us on a little jump here for you. So here we go. Okay. In Cold Aim, you talked about human trafficking. They wanted to know, and again, as I've said when we were, together at the beginning, before we got started, if there's something you can't talk about, that's a legitimate answer. So just say that. They want to know if you've had any cases that dealt with human trafficking in your police officer career.
None that I dealt with personally. We had training but when I was in uniform, trafficking was a little bit different. The social media took it to a whole another level. When I was still working, the issues we dealt with were people bringing illegal labor up, like from Mexico or from China, locking them up in a apartment complex, and taking away their identification, you know, transporting them to the job site and then back to the apartment complex and not letting them do anything. That was the type of human trafficking we dealt with mostly. I mean, there was sexual human trafficking, children and women too, but not to the level it is now, because you can, in Oregon, I was involved or with a home that was built to house women that were rescued from human trafficking.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
one of them shared once, she had her phone out, she was speaking, and she held up the phone. She goes, I just went online, and right now there are 26 women and girls for sale online. And I mean, and that is like way, way above what we dealt with when I was in uniform. So, and I just know from talking to those women that it's just totally different. But it's abuse. It's the same kind of thing, though. A lot of the times the women they're just brainwashed to believe that even though this guy is trafficking them, he's the only one who cares for them. Like an abused woman might believe that this man who is her husband who beats her is the only one that's ever going to love her. I mean, it's the same kind of lie from the pit of hell that, you know, so.
And totally agree. So, and yeah, social media has changed a lot of things in our world, not for good. Some good, some bad.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I was thinking about when I was reading this, because you wrote such believable police officers, does that, you yourself, you were a police officer for 22 years?
Yes.
Okay. Does that change how you write things? You know, does that come into play for you?
I hope it does. That's my goal. I mean, I read some books that were horrible. I remember somebody recommended a book to me because it was about a police, it was about Long Beach, and the main character was a police officer. And I started reading it, and it's just like, after the first chapter, I mean, the main character was just so unbelievable. It's like, there's like no cop I ever worked with would do what they did or say what they said. And it totally, it just totally lost me.
Okay.
So I really, really try to make it believable. I worked on the street. I worked in administration. I did background investigations. I was a detective for a little bit. So I like to think I have an idea of what a police officer really would do and what a police officer really would not do. So I try to that's my goal when I write, is to make it believable.
And I think you do that very well. Like you said, they're believable. You know, they're somebody you could talk to, you know, either as a police officer or as a human is, you know, what I always think of characters that I enjoyed. So, and being a police officer and you write books with them in it, what kind of research do you do for your books? Do you do research, or do you just go on what you know?
Well, I have to do research because things have changed so much. They've changed a lot. When I moved from California to Oregon, and the first thing I did was go on a ride along with a Jackson County sheriff, because I wanted to know how they did things differently. And in some ways, like for example, Long Beach was a big police department. I think we're the third largest in California, if I remember right. I might not be, but we're pretty close. We were a big department. So big departments sometimes have way more resources than smaller departments. And Jackson County Sheriff was a little bit smaller. In terms of the way they did police work, it was very similar. But things have changed. When I was working, we were just coming into the computers, and now I think they issue laptops to everyone, that kind of a thing. But that isn't what happened. You had to procure. You couldn't do your reports on the car computer. You had to go inside. And I'm sure it's all different now. And with Wi-Fi, that's all different. So, I mean, and also, you know, I try to keep up on the laws, how they're changing, because that makes a big difference too. Unfortunately, the trend these days is to decriminalize a lot of stuff that should still be criminal. But anyway, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I can't imagine the different things in the last 10 years that has been added.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just even like body cameras, I know, because that's a big thing.
Mhm.
Around here, that was, I believe it's just Grand Rapids that everybody, but it might be everybody, all police officers in Michigan. I don't know. I didn't follow the story that close, but that was a big deal around here that they were all wearing them. So
Uh-huh.
even that alone has changed a lot. So
Right. Right.
we got a couple more questions about your career
Uh-huh.
before you became a writer, and then we're going to wander back to the books.
Okay.
Some of, in your books, your police officers are married, and somebody was just curious how common that is. I think it's a good question.
You mean police officers being married to other police officers?
Yeah.
Um, well, it's getting more and more common. There's more and more women. When I was first hired, there were only 7 of us in the women's locker room. I mean, we had a locker room basically that was in a closet. There were only 7 or 8 of us, and that has changed exponentially. They've hired a lot more women, so it's becoming more common. When I was working, it was usually nurses, teachers. Those were but yeah, it's coming. And since I've retired, a really good friend that I worked with a lot, she actually married another guy that we worked with, and they're still married. They just retired and they moved to Reno. So yeah, it's becoming more common.
Okay.
And the hours are such, it's especially if you work graveyard, you're working weird hours. So who are you going to interact with other than other people that you work with? So makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I just never thought of it that way, but you're right. And yeah, I can see where, because you get that a lot where that's something that's very in common with each other. So you grow a relationship. So interesting. Things I'm learning tonight. So let's see. Some characters in your book become police officers because of issues in their past. Does that happen often in police careers?
I'm sure it does. I know that there was some people become police officers because their dad was, and more it'll be because their mom was. That's changing time. So yeah, and I have met people that had issues growing up that they felt would be better handled, and they felt they could better handle it if they were the police officer, the person in charge. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought those are 2 good questions. So let me ask you a couple questions about your writing. Let me get to that part of my list. Sorry about that. So you pretty much write in one genre. It kind of gets labeled romantic suspense or suspense. If you could write in any other genre, what would you write in?
Oh, wow. I don't really think I like this genre. I like it. I did try to write a nonfiction book. I tried to write a biography, biography of a swimmer, Florence Chadwick. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's from San Diego back in the 50s. For a short period of time, she was the highest paid woman athlete in the country. And I wrote it. I don't think I did that great a job with it. It's sitting on my shelf as we speak. So I decided, I'm a romantic suspense writer. That's just what I do. And I have tried in the past to write like a so-called secular novel. And I can't, because the spiritual aspect of life just won't leave me. So
well, it's part of who you are, it sounds like, because you were talking about Bible study groups you lead and stuff. So it's just, a natural part of you. So yeah, I have no problem with you staying in the Christian market, but so and what we're asking then, can you talk about your next book?
My next book was inspired by last summer and all the rioting. I mean, I was in a riot. I was in the Rodney King riots. So I absolutely know what it feels like to be in front of a hateful mob and have things thrown at you. And when that riot first started, none of us had safety gear. We didn't have all the gear they have nowadays. Anyway, be that as it may, I felt like I had to write a book about that. And so that's kind of centers around, I did not put COVID in it because I hate COVID and I don't want to write about COVID and I don't want to deal with COVID. And I'm sorry, I just don't. But it's about that whole issue, and it's about a couple of police officers that have to deal with it on different levels. And so that's that book.
Well, that actually sounds interesting, and I kind of agree with you. Don't put COVID in it. We're a good 20 years away from reading books about COVID.
Yeah.
In fact, I read one that the author changed. It came out this year in 2021, but he changed his date so that he didn't have to put COVID in it. So I thought that was brilliant. So because it was supposed to be like happening now, but it was. I thought, you know what, none of us want to read about that. So.
Right. Thank you.
So for you, what is one of the hardest parts about writing? Or maybe you don't struggle at all.
No, well, the hardest part I have is the ending. I always struggle with endings. So I really try to make myself get to a point where I have a lot of time to work on the ending. I don't always succeed, but that's my goal, because I'm a pantser. I don't outline, I just write. So it's just to make sure that everything's tied up believably, and we don't have any the author intrusion, saving the hero at the end. I don't like that, and I really try to avoid it.
Yeah, you know what, after reading several of your books, I wouldn't have guessed that you had trouble with your endings. So oh, somebody wants to know if you would ever write a suspense for children or teens.
No.
Okay. Well,
I'm not much of a kid person. I don't have kids, and all my nephews and nieces are grown up. So yeah, I don't think I would be able to speak to them.
I think that's a legitimate answer. No, just no. I'm sorry, that struck me as very funny. How long does it normally take you to write a book?
Well, 6 months is like the normal contract.
Okay.
Time. I had a much longer time to write Breach of Honor, and so I don't know, maybe I need more time, but it's like I find myself, if I don't have that deadline looming, I'm wasting time. I'm playing computer games. So I kind of sort of need, I think 6 months is a good time frame.
Okay. Now, does that include like just the first part of the book, or I mean, not part of the book, the first draft of the book, or does that include edits and everything?
No, well, that would be the draft that would get turned in.
Okay. Okay.
So that's not necessarily first. That would probably be 5th or 6th. But I mean, what gets turned in, and then there's always going to be edits. I love editors. I'm not worthy, so I totally need an editor. I will never say that I can edit my own books.
I probably would agree with you on almost all the authors I know too. So you're all right with editors. We love them. So I always have people ask, where do you get the ideas for your characters' names?
Sometimes they just come to me, like I'm already thinking about the next book, and those names just came to me. But I actually asked for help with the one that my next book. I have a Facebook page with Diane Mills and Danny Petrie, and I'm sorry, I'm totally going blank on the names. There's 6 of us. And anyway, on that Facebook page, I asked the readers to give me ideas for names. And that's where I got the names for the book about the rioting.
Awesome.
So, yeah, but normally something just comes to me, and I think, hey, I like that, and I'll write it down and just keep it for future reference.
Yeah, I like that. A quick question then: is the Facebook page something your fans can join, or is it like?
Oh, yeah, it's we're the A Team, Romantic Suspense A Team. And Lynette Eason, there we go. Lynette Eason, Lynn Blackburn, Hallie Bridgman, Diane Mills, Danny Petrie, and me are the Romantic Suspense A Team.
Awesome. There you go. So now we can all join and bother you. So awesome. One of the things I was curious about, you have always written series, usually 3-book series. I was trying to think if you had any either smaller or bigger, but
yeah, one of them's a 2-book. I have 1 2.
Okay. See, it's a good thing you guys know what you're talking about. But this is a standalone. So it's different for you. What was the positives and maybe the negatives of doing a standalone instead?
I actually liked it. Tyndale actually asked for standalone, and I actually liked it. I liked being able to wrap everything up in one book. I mean, it was like one package, and I just liked it.
Oh,
So it
good.
worked out better for me this time.
Yeah. Would you go back to series?
I don't know.
Okay.
They would have to specifically say they wanted me to, I think. Right now I'm happy. And the one that I just finished about the rioting is a standalone.
Interesting. I have to admit, if given a choice, I would read standalones, but I read plenty of series too. So, but yeah, I'm with you on that one. So, I think we're getting a whole slew of questions. You guys are busy all of a sudden. Yeah, we must have something that got them thinking. So this is interesting, and it can even lead into our next question. Did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
You know, I did when I was little. When I was younger, I used to write horse books. I loved The Black Beauty, and I loved My Friend Flicka, and all those horse books. And I would try to write. Horse stories. And then when I went to college, I had a creative writing class, and the teacher just absolutely hated everything I wrote. I mean, it really made me feel stupid.
What's
So,
that?
so I just kind of shelved it, and I didn't really. I've always been a reader, so I still read, and then by then I was into mysteries and suspense stories. And I don't know if you read the alphabet books, A is for alibi, B is for burglar. I loved all those. I really liked her. And then when I got into Christian fiction, it was Randy Alcorn's Deadline that really just hit me, and everything by Francine Rivers. Anyway, it was the riots. It was the Rodney King riots that really made me pick up the pencil again, because that was really a life-changing experience for me. Just everything about it. And I wanted to write about it, and I wanted to try and get across what I was feeling. And so that's where I never really did write about it. I never could bring that to the page. But that was what started me on my writing journey again.
Interesting.
I felt like I had something to say, and I just started trying to learn how to be a writer.
Well, here's a little known fact. Randy Alcorn's the reason I have the job I have now too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he doesn't know that, but I was working as a grocery store clerk, and there was, at the time in the area, they had little daycares, and the person who was supposed to be in it was called in sick, and they were panicking, and they're like, well, will you do it? And I said, well, let me run next door to the bookstore and grab a book, and then I'll go. And I grabbed his Dominion. And that's when I started really seriously reading Christian fiction again. So now we have something in common. Let's go. So somebody here asked, what are your current writing rhythms?
I don't know that I have a rhythm.
Oh,
I work best in the morning. I
Okay.
usually work best in the morning before anything else. So I don't try to force it. If I'm not getting anything by 11 or 12, I'll just go do something else. I really don't try to force it, but you can't edit a blank page. So I do try to just put something down and just keep writing. And a lot of times I'll be erasing or switching stuff around, but I don't really have a right. I see people, Hallie Bridgman, Sarah Sundin, they are so disciplined, and they are so, and I'm not that way. I bless them. They're wonderful writers. They write wonderful books, but I am just not that organized. So.
Well, that's not a bad way to put it, because it's good for people that want to be writers to remember they're all different. They're not going to do it like you do.
Right. Yeah, everybody has to find their own. And I just muddle through, and usually when I'm on a deadline, it just makes me muddle faster. But
muddling is a good word for it. I love that. So one of the attendees here wants to know, do you start with the spiritual story and then add the suspense, or does it all kind of flow together? Or
I start with a spiritual question usually. Usually it's a question or just a heart cry, and that's always there. But then the story just comes I don't know how to explain it. I honestly don't. All I know is that that has to be first, or I really feel like the book is missing something.
Interesting.
So,
I like that. And then somebody out of curiosity, and this is a little bit off topic here, but I love it, is do you have a favorite cop show or that you feel is, or one that you feel is a little more realistic than others?
I don't think any of them are realistic, but I used to love Castle. I like NCIS,
Okay,
but in terms of
favorite in the store.
no, I like Rizzoli and Isles, but are they realistic? No. They
You
can't
never,
be. You have to wrap things up too quickly.
I was gonna say, you never solved the crime in an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that's always what makes me kind of giggle at them too. There's ones I like. NCIS has always been good, so. Now you have said you are a reader, which is always good because, you know, that makes for good writers. So when you read, do you read solely for pleasure, research, or do you like a good mixture of both?
Usually always for pleasure.
Okay,
If I'm reading for research, it's usually articles online, or there's websites I go to that deal with laws and stuff like that. But yeah, it's for pleasure.
okay. And you talked about you know, were reading mystery and suspense. Is that mostly the genre you like to read now, or do you?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Totally, yeah.
yeah. Do you have some favorite authors or books you would like to share?
You know, one of my favorite books, and it's not a Christian novel, so I can't say that it's a totally clean novel, but it's by Robert Craze, and it's called Demolition Angel. And the only reason why that is, it's a great book. I love it. I've read it a couple times, but I had just read it when I met Davis Bunn at Mount Hermon one year. And I was really struggling with my writing at that point in time. And he gave me this bit of advice. He said, you know, pick a book that you really, really like, and then sit down and just copy the book, just type in the book. Not to copy the writing, but to get the rhythm, to get the beats, to get all that down, because I like the way the book flowed, and I like the message in the book, even though it wasn't a Christian novel. Sometimes they have messages that they don't even realize that they're putting. Anyway, so that's like one of my favorite books, and he's one of my favorite authors,
Interesting.
Robert Craze.
Robert Craze. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to remember that. I'll have to look that one up. It sounds interesting. So is it like I said, we're gonna wander off on a rabbit trail now. Is it suspense then, or is it?
Yeah, it's a suspense novel. It's a kind of a mystery. It's based on a bomb squad officer and who hits rock bottom and then is forced up to the light, so to speak. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, somebody is reading your background. That's the only problem with Zoom. And they're curious if the whiteboard is something you could share with us.
That is, actually, that's the book I just turned into Tyndale, the one that's next. The working title is Saving Grace.
Okay.
And so that's my timeline, and just some characters' names. But mostly it's the timeline, because that's one thing I always mess up. My editor, Erin Smith, bless her heart, she always has to walk me through the timeline and say, but this doesn't work.
Oh, shoot. No wonder we love editors, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to wander back to the second book too. So, or not the second book, the next book you're working on. And somebody was wondering if you would ever share in book form about your stuff that happened to you during the Rodney King riots.
You know, I don't, bits and pieces is kind of woven in to, but what happened back then is so out of step with what you saw then. What happened to us back then is we were caught totally flat-footed, because most of the carnage was in LA. It
Right.
just spread to Long Beach, and I can remember because I was working the day it started. And it started when the kids got out of school, and they just started rushing stores and looting, and there was only a handful of us against crowds and crowds. I can remember there being, we were trying to go from hotspot to hotspot. and I don't know that I could make sense of that because of what people see now happening, which is totally different. I mean, the cops are in riot gear and the crowds are a lot more violent.
Okay.
I just thank the Lord every day. The people that we dealt with, yeah, they were mad and they were spitting and they were throwing rocks, but on TV, you saw people actually really trying to hurt police officer. I mean, really. And I can remember we stood, it was getting dark and there were 5 of us and there were probably 500 people. And was just standing there with no riot gear, no nothing. And I wouldn't, today, the 5 of us would have been run over. And so, you know, I mean, there's time has left that behind, I think. So I don't know that it would be relevant in a book today.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, when you write your romantic suspense historical.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you have quite a large to be read pile, or is that something you like just stay focused on? This is what I'm reading now, and then go find
No,
it.
actually, I have like probably 5 or 6 books on Kindle that
Oh.
I'm reading. I'm actually trying to read he's a Christian self-published author. I'm actually trying to read something different. So perhaps I should say I have mostly suspense and romantic suspense, but I'm trying to read this one book that got really rave reviews, and it's like, I guess you'd call it a steampunk
Oh, yep.
space futuristic type novel. And it's good. His writing is good, but I haven't gotten very far in it, the book.
Okay.
Yet.
Can you share the title and the
I'd
author?
have to look on my Kindle because he's
Okay.
not one of my normal people, so I don't remember his name. I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. I apologize.
Don't do that. So I only interview you one at a time because then I can always remember their names. So I totally get that. Is there anything that is coming out soon that you're really looking forward to reading?
Oh, I look forward to Diane Mills. I do. So she's got one coming in September.
Okay.
I forget the title. She just wrote it on my, but I forget the title, but yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I have it over there and I can't quite read it. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I've always liked her writing. So
Yeah.
yeah, she's another one. You guys write similarly. Is that a word? Maybe I made a new word. So kind of alike. How's that? So yeah, I like both of yours. So and I don't know how to phrase it. You know what? I'm going to say it really simply, and then we'll kind of go from there. Where do you get your ideas for your books? I mean,
you know, sometimes it's from, well, like Crisis Shot. I got that idea from just what was going on at that period of time where policemen were being fired without being given any due process because of the mob, the Twitter mob. I'm sorry, I hate Twitter, but anyway, and so that was where Crisis Shot came from, where she actually is forced out of her job when she never did anything wrong. It just is something that could be made to look wrong.
okay.
Which is what happens a lot, I think, especially with social media. It's like people can twist things or show you one certain angle. I get a lot of police officer pages on Facebook, and they will show you both angles, like, for example, the angle that got the police officer fired or suspended or whatever, and then the actual angle of what he was dealing with. And a lot of people don't realize how quickly things can go wrong.
Right.
And so a lot of times and then the writing book obviously came from the riots. I don't remember, sometimes it's news events, sometimes it's just what's going on, and sometimes something just comes to mind, and then I start asking the what if questions. So everything generally comes from what if, but what if this happened? What if she did this, but this happened? My very first book, the kid, it was from a deal that happened in Long Beach where a kid killed a crossing guard and then put her body in the trunk of her car, stole her car, and then drove around and was showing kids her body. That's how he got arrested. But I was working juvenile at the time, and I just was looking at this kid. He looked so innocuous, and I was thinking, what if he didn't do it? And so that's where accused came from. So sometimes it's always the what if questions that give me the ideas. So I
Awesome.
guess it has, to answer your question, it has to be something that makes me ask what if.
Okay. So in some ways, it sounds like you sort of kind of base things on true stories.
Yeah, kind of extrapolations, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think that's probably what makes them very interesting. So, yeah, I agree with that. You've talked about, the author Craze. Is there any other author, living or dead, that has like just inspired you either in your writing or just, in your everyday?
I would have to say Francine Rivers, just because of the way she makes everything spiritual come alive.
Okay.
I mean, she really does. The message is just so clear and so right on with her. And
Do you have a favorite of hers?
I like the Mark of the Lion series. That was one of my favorite. And I don't usually read historical, but that was just one of my favorite. And then for just police work and police reality, I like another non-Christian author, Michael Connolly. He wrote
Yes.
the Bosch books, and I don't like the Bosch Netflix. I didn't like that at all. To me, that was not Bosch. But anyway, his portrayal of LAPD was pretty spot on. I mean, I really liked his writing, but again, it's not Christian. So, I don't want to tell people that, they're going to get a clean book if they read that book. But in terms of just police procedure, he did it really well.
Interesting. You know what, and I had forgotten about him, and I'm with you. I very seldom like either a TV or movie make of a movie or of a book, where you take a book and make a movie or a TV show. And nobody ever looks like what I think they're supposed to look like. So, and I love the Mark of the Lion series. So, here's a question, and you can decide to answer it or not. I always give the authors the out. If there's one thing you wish your readers knew about you, but no one has ever asked, what is that?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's, a legitimate answer. So, and then if I may ask while I'm thinking of it, and this just popped in my head, is what year did you start being a police officer? Were you
I was
working?
hired in 1987.
Okay. Yeah. So, what, again, I don't know if you can share it or not, is, and you've talked about the riots quite a bit, which it very much unnerves me when you talk about it, because we don't think of you guys standing there risking your own lives all the time. But of all your cases, is there one that just really stands out to you?
Well, the one I shared about the car crash, and then I had one that was kind of interesting. When I was a rookie, right after I got off probation, I was assigned to the front desk. It was a seniority thing, and I really hated being at the front desk. So I always had the scanner going, so I could hear what was going on in the field. And we had what was called a code red. There was a shooting. Somebody got shot, and so they were looking for the shooter. And so we're hearing the code red beep. That's all we're hearing. And while we're listening to that, somebody comes into the lobby. This guy walks into the lobby, walks up to me. He hands me something and he says, "I just did a shooting." And what he handed me was the gun in a case. And and they were all looking for him. I knew they were looking for him. Everyone knew they were looking for him. And so I just said, "Okay, do you want to come inside?" And I buzzed the door so he could push it open. He came inside and I arrested him. I took him downstairs, let them know that where he was. And of course, they were all extremely angry because they wanted to arrest him. But anyway, I took him downstairs and I booked him, and he never said another word about it. That was his only thing, was I just did a shooting. So yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And that was like a spontaneous statement. We didn't need Miranda. And it was pretty neat for a rookie to get to do something like that.
Wow. Wow, wow. I'm sure you could tell us stories all night, though. Then I probably wouldn't sleep either. So, okay, let me see here. Officer Tess, and this is from one of the attendees here. Officer Tess moved from a big city department to chief in a small town. Is that common, moving to smaller towns or being able to progress like that?
Well, it depends. You can move. It's hard to explain because obviously when you work for a big department, you're going to have a lot wider experience with all kinds of crimes, all kinds of issues. And so you would hope that if you moved to a smaller town, you would be well equipped to deal with whatever came up because you've already dealt with it. So I do know people that that retired from Long Beach and then moved to small towns only to get rehired in some other position like chief or, so I do know it happens. I wouldn't say it's common. Most people in big cities like the excitement. They don't want quiet. You know, seriously, cops are adrenaline junkies. They like to be doing things and to be driving fast with lights and siren. So that's part of the fun. But you know, it can happen. It doesn't, it's not like something that happens all the time.
Were you stayed pretty much in Long Beach then the whole time?
Yeah, I was always in Long Beach, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So besides bakerbookhouse.com and the bookstore itself, where can we find your books? Do you have a website you'd like to share? Do you do a blog?
I do have a website. I don't sell off my website though. I just don't want to deal with the tax ramifications. So I have, you can have buy buttons for all the major retailers on my website.
And thank you.
So yeah, but yeah, and a Kindle, and hopefully there will be eventually be an audiobook, I hope.
I love audiobooks. I have a long commute and I listen to audios to and from work every day.
Mhm.
So, but what is the address for your website?
It's www.janicecantore.com.
Well, that's pretty easy to.
And I actually do giveaways on my Janice Cantore books at Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I will be in a couple weeks doing a big giveaway. So.
Well, we better all run over there and get maybe the new book. So, but yeah, so that is all fascinating. So, and to be honest with you, I could listen to your stories all night long. It's a good thing you're an author because you're a really good storyteller. So I have to admit that has been just fun to listen to and fascinating because again, your books are so believable. You know, because you do write the good people and the bad people working side by side.
Mhm.
So, so I really appreciate that part of it. And, you know, you wrap in the spirituality that it's part of the everyday world. It's not forced in. So I really appreciate that. So, unless there is something else you would like to add, we will be heading home, so to speak, soon. It's funny when you're virtual. It's like, oh, now we're going to go home. Wait, we're all there already. So.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Actually, it's early for me, so I'm going to go play golf.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Do you play often?
I try to. I really like to play. So.
Do you like golf?
I do.
I always
like
think of it as a walk interrupted by a very stupid little white ball. So.
Yeah, for me, they're lime green balls, but yeah.
Okay. I had ones. But no, I used to golf more, but I don't do it. It's one of those games you have to do all the time, or you're not very good at it. So, but do you walk or cart?
You know, right now my knee's bothering me, so I cart, but I do prefer to walk. I just don't want to aggravate the knee.
Oh, I don't blame you either. So, well, there was a nice little rabbit trail. Oh, I think we're getting a question, so don't run away. Somebody knew we were leaving, so let's write fast. So, does that say force? Okay, sorry, I was trying to read writing that. She was writing really fast for me. Did you retire from the police force just to write, or did you retire and then start writing?
I was writing before I retired, but I retired. It was kind of a little bit of a surprise. I had hurt my back, so I was on restriction. The doctor said I couldn't wear my gun belt anymore.
Oh.
And so what happened is after 9/11,
Okay.
The police department took a good hard look at everybody they had that could be in full uniform, full duty. And they retired, they just came, I think about 15 of us at the same time, we're all in the same position. And they asked us each if we wanted to retire. They said we could stay, but where they could put us was we would probably be bouncing around to wherever we could be light duty. And so I just decided, I'll retire because I want to write. So that's what happened.
I'm sorry you're not a police officer, but I'm really glad you're a writer.
I miss the people, but I don't miss, and I'm sure glad I'm not working now. I pray for those people all the time. I really do. I mean, they're just really, it's just horrible right now what's going on. So
Yeah, I can't imagine, because like you said, in any situation, we always blanket, the police officers are all bad. Fill this in, whatever, is always everybody, whether it's one person or, so,
right.
yeah. There's a lot going on. You're right about social media. So, but thank you for joining us tonight. If you ever decide to come up to a cold state and want to visit Michigan, let me know. We would love to have you in the store also. But where you are, I totally understand if you never come to Michigan. Maybe I'll come visit you instead.
Yeah, there you go.
Might be easier. So, but thank you very much for joining us tonight. That was fascinating. Like I said, I think we can listen to your stories all night. So I really appreciate you joining us. And for you that were listening in on us, thank you for your questions. Thank you for attending here tonight with us. Go to bakerbookhouse.com and pick up Breach of Honor. You will not be disappointed. So, but you guys all have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.